When building a basic material and working on its main body color, your two major controls are going to be the ambient and diffuse color swatches that you find under the basic parameters heading on the material. Now I'd like to go ahead and start by first unlocking the two buttons. There we go. Let's dive into the diffuse. What the diffuse color swatch controls is the main body color of the skin that you're creating, get this, in areas that are lit. In other words, the illuminated parts of the surface. Now it's very easy to change that color by simply clicking on the color swatch and opening up the color selector dialog. Now the dialog is kind of divided with a left-hand side and a right-hand side. I'd like to start off on the right. You can see we have 6 ramps with the names of what each of these ramps controls listed off to the left. Notice also that each of those ramps has a little white handle in it that you can then grab and move to the left or right to take more or to add more of that particular element. Now from here, it's pretty easy. If we were trying to create a color that maybe had a little bit more red into it, all we'd simply do is to grab the handle in the red ramp and simply now move that to the right. Now in doing so, you're going to find two things changing. One, the color swatch in the lower right-hand corner of the dialog, but probably more importantly, look at the sample swatch inside the materials editor. And that's really all there is to it. You simply move a ramp from one side to the other to either add or subtract that color. Now, one point of confusion might be the fact that you're seeing the color of the background behind the handles changing. So for an example, if you look in the red ramp at this point, you don't really see much red color. Now here's what's happening. Believe it or not, those changes actually make it a little bit easier to work. This is what you need to do. Think of the color you want to make. If you can find that particular color in any of the red, green, or blue ramps, simply move the handle in that ramp to that particular side. So for an example, look at the red ramp. If I wanted to make my sample ball blue, all I'd simply do is to grab the handle in the red ramp and pull it more to the left. See what's happening here? And if I wanted to make this a little bit more of a lighter green, well, again, look in the green ramp. All I'd simply do is to grab its handle and scoot it a little bit more to the right. Now, what do you think you'd do from here if you wanted to make this a brighter green? Well, look at the blue ramp. Simply grab the handle in the blue and now pull it to the left-hand side. And that's really all there is to it. Moving the top 3 handles in one direction or another to get whatever color you're desiring. Now the 4th ramp down, called Hue, this is pretty self-explanatory. Look at the colors in the ramp. If I wanted to make this more of an orange color, I'd simply move the handle in that direction. Lighter blue, we'd simply go over here. And then maybe red, we could go to the far right. Now the 5th ramp down, spelled SAT, stands for saturation. Look at the colors in the ramp. The right-hand side of the ramp is fully saturated, in other words, full of color, where in which the left-hand side of the ramp is basically absent of color. So if you grab the handle in the saturation ramp and move it to the left, look what's happening to the color of your sample ball. It's staying that red color, but you're gradually pulling more and more of that red out. Let's go back and take that to the far right. The 6th ramp down, Value, again, the colors within the ramp kind of tell you the story. Notice how it's very bright on one side and very dark on the other. So Value controls how light or how dark the skin will become. So if we grab that handle and pull it to the left, again, it stays the same color, but a darker version of that. Let's go back and take it to the far right. The same thing can pretty much be done on the left-hand side of the screen, a little bit of a different way though. If I, for an example, wanted to make a green color, I could simply take my mouse and click directly in the green. If I move now my mouse down, it's getting darker. If I move it up, it's getting lighter. You have a hue ramp up at the top that goes left to right, and you have a whiteness ramp that works pretty much like the saturation values on the right-hand side of the screen. Adding more whiteness by pulling the ramp down takes out that given color. We'll take that back up to the top. And on the left-hand side, we had pretty much what the Value did. As you drop that down, the color is becoming darker and darker. Let's go take that one back up at the top also. Notice there's also an eyedropper in the lower left-hand corner. Clicking on that, you can actually go to any position on the screen and click, and you'll grab that particular color. If you don't like what you've done and you want to set it back to where it originally started, in this case gray, all you'd simply have to do is to hit the reset button. There we go. So one last time through, look at the color ramps. If I wanted to create a purple color, what would you do? I'll simply take the green ramp and take out the green. If I wanted to be a little bit brighter, I'll simply add more of the Value. And we'll say we're happy with that. Let's go ahead and say OK. The second part of the equation in creating a solid color is the ambient color swatch, where in which the diffuse controls the main body colors in areas that are lit. The ambient controls again the main body color, but in areas that are not lit, the non-illuminated parts of the surface, in other words. Now, almost inevitably, what you'll end up doing is taking the diffuse color, copying it over to the ambient, and simply darkening it up. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll grab the colored chip for diffuse, we'll drag it over to the ambient, we'll drop and say copy. Now, because normally a body color is simply a darker version in the areas that aren't lit, we'll open up the ambient and we'll simply drop down the value. When we're happy with that, we'll say OK, and you've now got a nice combination for a solid body color.